Welcome back to the channel. We're back with our Final Fantasy Commander deck profile today with Szrael, Genesis Shepard. For 5 mana, you get 2/5 with flying. You may play lands from your graveyard, and whenever you sacrifice another non-token permanent during your turn, put a number of +1/+1 counters on a creature equal to Szrael's power. So we have plenty of ways to sacrifice things, mostly lands in this deck, in order to make sure to keep putting +1/+1 counters onto our other creatures, along with some synergies for those landfalls, because normally a lot of things that say sacrifice a land say get an additional land. Um, but this commander hasn't been released quite yet. This is coming out in the Edge of Eternity set, but it was revealed recently here. So we'll also be covering the other one for the precon. This one is for a precon as well. And if you guys do have other commander deck profiles that you'd like to see, make sure to leave it down in the comment section. But let's get into it card by card. We have Ashnod's Altar, sacrifice a creature, add 2 colorless mana, allow us to sacrifice our creatures that we don't need right now in order to get that additional mana, but also those counters onto our other creatures thanks to Szrael's ability. Blackblade Reforged, +1/+1 for each land you control. We want to make sure we have a way to power up Szrael. And once again, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly. I'm just assuming I am. Equip creatures with +1/+1 for each land you control. So we want to make sure that since we're getting all these lands, we get Szrael even more powerful. We get more +1/+1 counters onto our stuff. Chocobo Racetrack, whenever a land you control enters, get a 2/2 bird, +1/+0 until end of turn. It's also non-token permanent, so you can't really sacrifice the chocobos off of his ability, but it's still nice to have some tokens there on the battlefield that could be quite strong with all those landfall abilities that we're getting. Conduit of the Worlds, we want additional ways to play lands out of our graveyard because we can't always rely on having our commander on the battlefield. You can also choose target non-land permanent in your graveyard. If you haven't cast a spell turn, you can cast that card, only as a sorcery. But once again, like I said, we just want to make sure we have a way to cast lands out of our graveyard. And also, it's nice to get our cards back from our graveyard since they're even putting a lot in there. Hammer of Perforos, creatures you control have haste, pay 3 mana, sacrifice a land. There we go, we had something that we sacrificed for Szrael's ability. Put 3/3 Golem Enchantment Artifact Creature token onto the battlefield, which apparently, according to the videos I saw recently, is apparently the only thing with 3 card types, Enchantment, Artifact, and Creature, onto the battlefield. But it's mostly that haste ability that we're looking, the sacrifice that we're looking for off that. And the haste is nice there as well, allowing us to swing in with our creatures the turn they come out, which it could also be the turn that they get that counter on them. Corn agreed. Whenever a player plays land, that player draws a card. We're going to be getting plenty of land, so we'll be getting plenty of draw power off of that. Soul Ring for some additional mana. Zurin Orb, sacrifice land, gain 2 life. So if we need that final push on our opponent, we could just sacrifice a land, get those 2 +1/+1 counters onto something. If we say, I'm just assuming Szrael's at his base power, sacrifice another land, sacrifice another land, sacrifice another land, and eventually, swing in with that big creature that we have because we just sacrificed however many lands we had, normally at least like 5. Ancient Green Warden, if you may play lands from your graveyard. Once again, we can't rely on having Szrael on the battlefield. If a land would cause an ability to happen, it happens an additional time. So we want to make sure, with all these landfall abilities we have, we want to make sure we can keep on having them. Avengers Zendikar. Whenever this creature enters, create a 0/1 plant token for each land you control, which will be quite a bit. And whenever a land you control enters, which will happen quite a bit, put a +1/+1 counter on each plant you control, aka get a whole bunch of plants, get a whole bunch of strong plants, and then eventually make them even stronger with Szrael's ability. Azusa, Lost but Seeking. We want to make sure that since we're going to be sacrificing our lands, we want to make sure that we have plenty of lands, so let's play some additional lands. Braids of Risen Nightmare. At the beginning of your end step, so this will still be during our turn for Szrael's ability. Sacrifice an artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker. We don't care about what we sacrifice. It all depends on what we need and what we want to get rid of our opponent's board. If you do, each opponent may sacrifice a permanent. If it shares a card type with it, for each opponent who doesn't, that player loses 2 life and draws a card. Braids. So basically, sacrifice stuff, get counters onto things. Also, potentially move our opponent's stuff, or draw some cards. Braids Cabal Minion, 4 mana. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, you may sacrifice an artifact, creature, or land. Well, not may. That player sacrifices an artifact, creature, or land. So, it doesn't mind us, because we'll just be getting those +1/+1 counters off of that. Bristly Bill. Landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. You may as well put it onto Szrael so that you can then put those additional counters back onto Bristly Bill or another one of your creatures. And eventually, you can pay 5 mana to double the number of +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. So, get those counters on stuff with Szrael, double it, get those additional counters on Szrael. Super good card in this deck. Dryad, Elysian Grove, another way to play some additional lands. And lands you control are every basic land type, so we don't need to worry about having what type of land they tap for. Genova, Ancient Calamity. This one's super fun in this deck. Another new card. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a number of +1/+1 counters equal to Genova's power on up to one target creature. It could be Szrael. Basically, you keep putting counters from this on Szrael, counters from Szrael back onto this, and you keep getting more and more power onto each of them. And then that card also becomes a mutant, and whenever a mutant you control dies, draw cards equal to its power. That could be quite a bit. Jury, Master of Revu. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, put a +1/+1 counter onto Jury, which will also get some additional +1/+1 counters off of Szrael. And then when it dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. That could be an opponent. That could be enough for removal at a certain point. Corvold, Fey Cursed King. Whenever Corvold enters the battlefield or attacks, sacrifice another permanent. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, put a +1/+1 counter onto Corvold and draw a card. We don't just have to worry about getting those counters onto him from Szrael. We get him off his own ability, and you also get some draw power. We like to see it. Loot, Exuberant Explorer, play initial land each turn is the main ability you care about, or we pay 6 to get something that for free, essentially based upon the amount of lands that we have. Lowe's Cobra for some additional mana off of that as well. For some ramp, Lumra, Belle of the Woods. With all these lands we're going to be sacrificing, we may as well get them all back from the graveyard at once, get all the landfall abilities at once. Should be plenty of abilities off Lowe's Cobra, especially pairing that with Zurin Orb. We like to see it. Mazriak, Crawl, Death Priest. Flying, whenever a player sacrifices another permanent, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So it doesn't just have to be our opponent sacrificing things, it could also be our opponent sacrificing things. And this one doesn't care about what turn it's during. Mina, Dan Wildborn, play additional land each turn, or return a land you control to its owner's hand. Target creature gains trample to end turn. aka with how powerful we're making certain creatures with Szrael's ability, we want to make sure that they can actually deal some damage. Morag, Fury of Akum. Each creature gets +1/+1 for each time it has attacked its turn. If a land enters, get an additional combat phase. So with how many lands we could keep on playing, we could keep on getting combat phases potentially. I'm not Locus of Rage. Whenever land enters battlefield, create a 5/5 green-red elemental creature token. Whenever this or another elemental you control dies, deal 3 damage to any target. Keep on getting those elementals, keep on dealing more damage to our opponent, essentially. Orcish Lumberjack, really good card in this deck. Sacrifice a forest, which, we're in the colors for forest, so we get plenty of those in order to get Dream out of any color, but also get some additional power with Szrael because you sacrifice something. Rampaging Bailots for some additional tokens there for that protection. Ramming up Excavator, another way to play some additional lands out of your graveyard, because once again, we can't always rely on having Szrael on the battlefield. Sacro Tribe Elder, sacrifice this creature. Wow, we did it. We got the thing. We get those counters onto something else when we sacrifice it, getting us the additional land as well. Spring Bloom Druid enters, sacrifice the land. There we go, got the sacrifice ability, and then get 2 additional lands on top of that. Sylvan Safekeeper, sacrifice the land. Keep on doing that, keep on getting more and more counters. The Gitrog Monster, at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice the Gitrog Monster unless you sacrifice a land. That's specifically sacrificing the land. So, we get those counters onto something, probably Gitrog Monster. Whenever you play an additional land during each of your turns, whenever one or more lands you control is put into your graveyard from anywhere, draw a card. aka when we sacrifice that land, or we sacrifice other lands from other ways, we keep on drawing cards. And we keep getting more and more lands. Tireless Provisioner for either treasure or clue when we get the landfall ability. Tireless or food. For a food or treasure. This one's for the clue. But yeah, we want those landfall abilities, getting those additional tokens, getting those additional benefits. Traveling Chocobo. Let's play some lands off the top of our library as well. Let's play the birds, but we don't have any birds. And also, saving with Ancient Green Warden, making so those abilities happen at additional time. Wayward Swordtooth for an additional land drop every turn as well. And then Zelding for that additional land drop. It gets more powerful for each land you control. No trample, but he does get some even more powerful if you have Szrael on the battlefield there. We have enchantments on the battlefield. Druid class for initial landfall every turn. And also some life gain if you do have the lands. Exploration for, additional landfall every turn. Ride the Shoe Puff, +1/+1 counter onto target creature you control every time a land enters. aka some of the additional counters there onto Szrael anytime we have a land enter. I'm sure if you played Standard recently, you've seen this card. But yeah, that allows us to put even more counters onto other stuff once we eventually get them with Szrael. Spelunking makes our lands don't enter tapped, but when it does enter your battlefield, you do draw a card, and you put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. And then squandered resources, sacrifice a land. That's fine with us. Add mana to your mana pool of any type that land could produce. This only happens plays ability as a mana source. So tap a land for mana, sacrifice this, add additional mana, play it back from our graveyard, and just do that again. And then get those counters onto stuff with Szrael's ability. Let's scroll on over to the second half of the deck. As always, we'll scroll through lands at the end. Beast Within for a little bit of removal, Chaos War for a little bit of removal, Constant Miss, buyback, sacrifice land, creatures deal no combat damage this turn. It's a fog, normally fogs aren't good. Buyback, but sacrifice the land though. You want to sacrifice those lands in order to keep getting your stuff back. So let's keep on protecting ourselves, let's not take any damage and keep getting more and more powerful creatures. Crop rotation, sacrifice a land, get a land, aka sacrifice like, I don't know, Dragon Skull Summon, get this, and then that sacrifices itself as well because you don't have another layer on the battlefield. But yeah, it's the additional sacrifice that we want off that card. Deadly Dispute, sacrifice a creature or artifact, get those counters, get a treasure token, draw 2 cards. Endless Restoration, sacrifice a land. I've been noticing a theme here. We've been sacrificing a bunch of lands because we can play them back from the graveyard, and we get some additional lands off that. Same with Harrow, same with Rolling Regrowth, and then Heroic Intervention for a little bit of protection there. Vraska, Golgari Queen, sacrifice another permanent, gain a life, draw a card. I mean, it's not just gain a life, draw a card, it's also gain a life, draw a card, get some counters onto something else. Destroy target non-land permanent, with CMC 3 or less. And again, emblem with whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game. They're probably not getting that ability because you need to activate the first ability 6 times. Blasphemous Act for a little bit of a board wipe there. Eldritch Evolution, cast a spell, sacrifice a creature, that's fine with us. Search your library for a creature card with mana value X or less, where X is 2 plus the sacrifice creature's mana value. AKA, get rid of one of our things, get a stronger thing. Flare of Cultivation, sacrifice a non-token green creature, get a green creature, get 2 basic lands out of your deck, but we sacrifice something, so we get those counters on something as well. Farseek to get a mountain or swamp power deck specifically for this deck. Nature's Lore to get a forest, Escape Shift, sacrifice any number of lands. So that's plenty of stuff that we could sacrifice in order to get plenty of +1/+1 counters onto things. Search your library for that many land cards, put them on the battlefield, and shuffle your library. May as well sacrifice everything for us to Szrael, and then, get all those tokens, all those stuff that we need with our landfall abilities. Toxic Deluge for another board wipe, and Vandal Blast for a board wipe for all those artifact decks that are popping up recently. But that's the general overview of the deck. Well, that's the card by card of the deck. If you guys like it, make sure you like the video. Leave a comment there about any change that you'd make. But yeah, hope you guys have a great rest of the day.